Hello and welcome to our final piece of software, Adobe InDesign. Now, I just want to pause for a second and talk about what version of InDesign I'm using. I'm using InDesign CC 2018, and that's really important. They're not drastically different like Illustrator 2017 and 2018 are, but it is important that you're using 2018 consistently because whenever you save files, they're not going to open up in 2017 unless you save them in a specific type of format. So, what is InDesign? Well, InDesign is a piece of software that's largely used for print layout. So that means making flyers, making books. Basically, every printed media that you see that has some sort of design was probably accomplished in InDesign if it was made in the last 5 to 10 years. So whenever you go and you see a large poster or you see any book that you've ever picked up or ebook even, they were probably designed in InDesign. So let's get started. Just like Illustrator and Photoshop, we have the same kind of basic work setup, and we can click Create New. I'm going to click that, and we have our new document window. I'm going to just close out of this. Now, just like the other pieces of software we've been using, we have print, web, and mobile. We're going to just be using print or web in this class. Mobile is kind of its own thing, specifically for UI. It's not great. So we're going to be using print and web. Now, just like Illustrator and Photoshop, we need to consider what our format is. In this case, I'm going to be printing a single page flyer, right? So a flyer that I can print out and hand out to people or hang up on a wall. So that's going to determine what preset we're using. There's different presets here for different sizes of paper. I'm going to use letter. And then on the right hand side, I can detail my stuff. So I'm going to give this a name. I'll call this demonstration flyer. And then we have the width and the height, just like in Photoshop and Illustrator. The units by default should be on picas. Now picas are a very common printing unit. They're really precise, so people really like them. I'm going to stick with picas. All you need to know is picas are basically like another form of measurement. So if I switch this to inches, you'll see it's 8.5 by 11. If I switch it to picas, you see 51p and then a number after that. So with picas, you can do like decimal places, which is really great. You can't do that with pixels. So I have 51 picas by 66 picas. And then we can switch the orientation here. We can tell it the number of pages we're going to have. You can always add pages later, so I just leave this at 1. We tell it what starting number we're going to have. So let's say we have a book and we're working on the first half or the second half. We're going to need to change the starting number. We'll just leave this at 1. This is a really important option right here, facing pages. That means, is it a book or a magazine, basically? So do I have a right page and a left page that face each other? I'm going to uncheck that because I'm just making a flyer. And then lastly, we have a primary text frame. Now this is used basically for a book. That means that you're going to have a large amount of text on each page that is continuous, which is what a book is, right? We're not going to be using that for this one. Then we have the columns, the number of columns, and the column gutter. So this is the space between the columns. Let's go ahead and say we have a 2-column page setup. We can actually see kind of an example of a little 2-column setup right here. And we're going to leave this at a 1 pica gutter. If we wanted to, we could type in something like 0.25 inches. And whenever we do that, it will convert it to picas, which is 1p6. So I'm going to just leave that. And then I have margins down here. Margins, we don't have to follow them. They're just basically preset guides used to place our text. So let's say I want 1/2 inch margins all over. And that is 3 picas. It's good to know. Then the next option is bleed and slug, and these are really important for printers. So bleed, we talked about a little bit in Illustrator. Basically, whenever we send a document off to a printer, we might stretch our, let's say we have a background color and we stretch it to the very edge of our page in InDesign or in Illustrator. Whenever we send it to a printer, as it's printed and whenever it's cut, there may be a little sliver of white, right? You've all seen that before. Whenever you don't perfectly cut like a rectangle or something out, you have that little sliver of white page. That's a really bad thing. So we're going to always add some bleed on every one of these documents, and we're going to try and match that bleed with our content. So the bleed is basically a little bit of wiggle room that the printer can then cut around. I'm going to change this to an 1/8 inch bleed, 0.125 inches, which is 0.9 picas. 0.125 is an 1/8 of an inch, by the way. Down here we have the slug. A slug is basically a little special area where you can give information to your printer. We're not going to be using that in this class, so we'll just ignore that. I'm going to click Create, and here is our document, right? We have this red guide here, which indicates the bleed. That's an 1/8 inch bleed all the way around. And then we have some guide set up for our columns and our margins. So we have 2 columns, we have this gutter between them, and we have margins all the way around, and we are good to go. The last thing we need to do is save this document. I'm going to go Command S or Control S on Windows. And whenever we save an InDesign document, we can save it in this CC 2018 document, CC 2018 template, or this IDML file. If you are just going to use CC 2018, so you are only using your computer which has 2018 on it, or a lab computer that has 2018, this is fine. If you know for a fact that you are going to be using 2017, 2016, you're going to be hopping around to different computers, you need to save it in this IDML or else it will not work. That is very important. So I'm going to leave it like that because I only use 2018, and I'm just going to click Save, and we are good to go.